Alongside me today is Mr. Ciarán Ingram, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today, Ciarán. And I just want to give a little brief introduction to who you are, a bit about yourself.
Yeah, and a pleasure is all mine, man. This is something that's well overdue, and I know we were getting we were meant to do this about a month or two ago, but yeah, things got in the way. So yeah, super chuffed to be here, and bro, you're doing everything right in the game of entrepreneurship and business. But yeah, my name's Kieran. I'm 24 years old. I come from Cavan, as most of you are. A little bit suspicious of, I guess. And yeah, I'm in the remote high ticket space. I've been in the remote high ticket space for the last 16 months and came from a background preliminary in the aviation field. So I did a bachelor's of science in aviation for 4 years and then graduated from that in 2022 and then stepped into the high ticket space from 2024 to now. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been an amazing experience, especially mindset wise. And yeah, excited to go over everything today.
Amazing. And you said at the end there, you said like mindset wise. That was one question that I actually had because you're living kind of a normal life in a sense when you're whatever doing your bachelor's in aviation. How has your head and your mindset changed since getting into entrepreneurship?
That's a really good question. It's not so much changed. I think I've always had that mindset of, I guess, positive outlook on life and delusional optimism, like even before getting into the space. And so I think I would come back to that, and it hasn't changed because even when I was in school, when I was in jobs that I didn't find fulfilling, I always had in the back of my mind, like, how am I going to do this? Or, what's next for me? How am I going to solidify my name in an industry that I'm passionate about, or whatever it is? But I always just had this kind of like optimism that there was more out there for me. Yet the thing that was actually holding me back, in a sense, and it's funny that you go over that, is the environment which I was in, and the environment that I put myself in. Obviously, of course, like it always comes back to yourself. But what I mean by that is, like, the people around you, when you're in a working environment that you just don't want to be in, and you're just there for the money or whatever it is, I would let that actually hold me back from actually just being who I say I wanted to be. And so I think going back to that though, like, of course, it's not that it hasn't changed. I think it's just amplified itself a lot more since stepping into, the online sales world and making money online.
And in the online sales world, I know myself, I was in it for a bit, that there is this kind of success is almost everybody's successful in this group of people. The majority of them are in Marbella, and to get pulled into, I have to go to Marbella to make money, or I have to leave my hometown to make money. How do you make sure that you surround yourself with a good environment, even when maybe you can't do things like moving out of your hometown, or maybe you still have to work that part-time job at the weekend?
Hmm. The first thing that came to mind, and I'll say this honestly and earnestly, is isolation, right?
Well,
I think, in my experience anyway, if you know you have a big goal and you have big ambitions for what you want in your life, and you are maybe aren't surrounded by the best people, or aren't in the best environment, not by choice, but just that's the way it was, and that's the way cards were dealt to you. The first step is awareness. And what I mean when I say awareness is like awareness of self. And we touched on it earlier. You're like, yes, I'm a very self-aware guy. And sometimes that actually impedes my ability as a salesman to, get things done, because obviously I'd spend too much time reflecting. So I'm kind of finding that balance between self-awareness and actual action. But going back to that, yeah, isolation, like, ultimately you are the biggest determinant of success, like you as an individual. And if you don't understand yourself enough to a degree that no one else does, like, you should be your own biggest fan. You should understand your ins and outs, like the back of your hand, like how you think, why you think a certain way, and constantly try to understand like where that actually comes from, and how you can use it to better yourself, use it to excel, and get out of the environment that you don't want to be in. There is this concept of like, yeah, you shouldn't matter where you are, and I do agree. I think especially recently, you should not let your environment dictate who you are as a person. I fundamentally attribute that to a lot of people's like success. But it definitely does matter, right? I think this whole concept of like not putting yourself in better environments, if you can, is a silly concept. Like any opportunity that I get to come out here to be around guys that are doing the things I want to be doing, I take it. Like it's just inevitable that you're going to grow, you're going to learn new insights, you're going to have a new perspective about life in general. And denying that is maybe a form of a little bit of like self-delusion. It's like, okay, I don't need this, like, because it's not going to help me. But it will help you, whether you know it or not. Maybe not on a conscious level, but also on a subconscious level, it's going to help you. Because just being in the sun, being around fit, healthy people, bro, like you're gonna want to perform at a higher level inevitably. That's just how it is. But it's not everything.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you're spot on there. Like subconsciously, even with like good weather and all, like we had back in Ireland here, we had like a week of sun, and everyone is changing. Everyone's attitude towards the day is more positive. Everyone's just in a better mood. And you talked about self-love, and in the kind of the entrepreneurial space, there's especially surrounding yourself with people who are ahead of you, you often come to the realization, wow, I'm so far behind and I need to catch up. And that's good because you're uncomfortable and you're like, whoa, okay, I need to improve. How do you find the fine line between that and also saying, okay, I'm doing good work, keep going, and actually find time to have that self-love, like you said?
It's a choice. Everything comes down to whether you want to be happy with where you're at or not be happy with where you're at. It literally comes down to, in my opinion, yeah, there's always going to be people doing better than you. Like that's just the perspective that's true and logical. There is always going to be someone that's ahead of you, doing more than you. Comparing is the thief of joy, right? It's as cliche as it sounds. I honestly wake up every single day, and at least I try, and feel an immense sense of happiness and gratitude for me and where I am in my life, every single day. And maybe it's not for like a continuous 9 to 9 experience, and it might only be like, I feel, oh my god, I'm so happy and so grateful for my life for maybe 2 hours. But it's that I always find time to fully appreciate where I am, what I've done, who I've become, because it really gives you that sense of like, I can do this, and I have that certainty within myself, because I think it's like, I know when you have that conviction within yourself and you have enough self-love, bro, you can do things. You can do anything that you put your mind to, because if you believe that you can, it all starts with that belief. And even I'm touching on the mindset, I don't want to touch on it too much because I know we're going to go into it, but any sliver of doubt that you have within your own ability is just going to directly correlate to what you see on the outside world and like your external reality. The only way you get that certainty within yourself is by appreciating who you are, by appreciating you are 1 in 8 billion people. You are different. You have a unique ability to do things that that no one else can. And that should literally light a fire inside you every single day to be like, I'm Ciarán Ingram, or I'm Hugh Sully. Like that's me, and no one else is me. So yeah, it's a really constant reminder. And to be honest with you, I think everyone has it. You know, like even the people that you've spoken to on the podcast so far, I don't think they're in any way concerned really about, like, yeah, of course it all slivers in every now and again in terms of like, oh my god, this guy's doing better than me, or like I need to get up to his level or whatever it is. But I think they're just so focused on themselves and their own mission that that level of like consciousness is it's quite a low level of awareness in my opinion. I think if you're comparing yourself at this stage in your career life, for me anyway, I think it's super childish, and it's super it doesn't serve you in any single way. So just why bother? You know, I think the other day I caught myself being like, oh, like I saw this some guy with a Rolex, and I was like, oh, like I'm not there yet, and I was like, Ciarán, like shut the fuck up, you know, I just catch myself. But like even 2 years ago, that would have been a day ruiner for me. You know, see
Yeah.
some guy with a Rolex, and I'll be like, oh, I'm nowhere in life, and then I just go and wallow for the rest of the day. So it is that constant like build up of practicing and becoming self-aware enough to the point where it doesn't affect you anymore.
And these realizations that you have, did these kind of come when you started getting into sales and when you started kind of uncovering the subconscious mind and being around this group of people, or was this something that you always had?
I think it's something that I had on a low level, and then it's obviously been amplified, like I mentioned, you know,
Yeah.
since getting into sales. You know, I've always been quite as yeah, aware of my mind and you know how it works and how I want to always tweak it to improve what I can do on an external scale. And I think that primarily comes from you know my background. I've lived in the UAE for the first half of my life. I was born there. You know, my dad had a successful recruitment company there, and you know we grew up there, and I think that really gave me a different perspective and an outlook on life for the first 10 years because I was able to see that. And then I was also like, you know, when I come back to Ireland, I was able to see, you know, the hardworking middle class Irish folk, you know how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, you know, like that's always just been solidified in my mind as like, wow, you know, I've seen some things and I've seen what's possible. I've seen what, you know, the differences between like two types of people that are in a position that they are in and why certain people are in a certain position. But definitely since getting into sales and since starting it, oh my goodness, like it's changed the trajectory of my entire life for sure. And it's no coincidence that, you know, any single hyper successful businessman, whether it's an entrepreneur or salesman, like whatever it is, how did you start? What did you do? They say they all say sales. It's no coincidence.
And how has understanding sales, knowing sales, being able to sell affected your ability to communicate in your personal life and build relationships?
Yeah, massively. I think you know it's a people's game. So I mean, like even everyone that I've met in you know the sales training group, you know yourself, the guys, that's all come as an output from getting into the industry. And obviously I'm meeting more and more new people on a daily basis that are either in the industry or are running very successful offers and picking their brains as well. So it like it's everything because you know once you're in an industry, you know you kind of understand everyone that's in it, you know what different roles people have within it. I mean, you have to communicate. You have to get yourself out there because you know closed mouths don't get fed. So I would say it's affected everything. Like in my personal life, you know, when it comes to like family and friends, I really try to what's the word when you're kind of trying to compartmentalize your thoughts and compartmentalize your life into different areas. So I try to keep, my family especially very like compart over there, and then
Mm.
like sales Ciarán,
Yeah.
um, business savvy Ciarán in another box, and then like obviously relationship Ciarán, and it's
Yeah.
very compartmentalized.
Mm.
Some people disagree with that, others don't, or others do. That's just the way I roll.
Mm. I love that. You said closed mouths don't get fed. And one thing that I've been trying to do a lot recently is, and I suppose I always was very curious, but it's a trait that I've noticed across people who are very, very successful, is they'll question like the tiniest little things you're doing. And you said it there, just picking the brains of people who are, years ahead of you. I think that curiosity is such an undervalued, it's not even really a skill. Anybody can be curious, anyone can ask questions, but like you
Mm,
said, the power just behind like questioning everything and anything, I think is so undervalued.
yeah, yeah, and it's honestly you learn so much more by being the dumbest person in the room every
Yeah.
single time, and that's definitely a strength that I hold, in terms of any room that I do step into, and I know, um, there's people in the room, or even if there isn't people in the room that aren't quote unquote ahead of me in any way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm always the last, maybe the last one to speak in terms of like, well, what do you do, and how do you, it's all, you can learn something from every single person on this planet, and like we
Mm.
mentioned, we touched on earlier, like you are 1 in 8 billion, and you hold a very unique set of characteristics that, no one else has, and no one will be able to replicate. And that's why like authenticity, being yourself is so rare these days, and it's why people gravitate towards it so much, because it's different, and it's like, wow, I admire that, trait in a person. I don't know what it is, on a scientific scale, like why that is, but I believe maybe it has something to do with the way the world has been so saturated recently, with social media and, everything of that nature, that everyone's kind of the same or carbon copies of each other. And maybe subconsciously, we've all been thought or led to believe that, oh, well, like everyone's the same. And,
Mm.
this guy has a certain set of characteristics, and I just know what he's going to be like. And, um, yeah, but being authentic is scary, bro. Like it's
Yeah.
not it's not an easy thing to do, which is why, it's such a glorified trait, for people to kind of gravitate towards, and it's no coincidence that like any hyper successful person I've listened to a lot of. I think I touched on a video that I did the other day, in the Founders podcast,
Mm.
and just understanding that like, bro, all these guys were so unapologetically themselves as to like why they are who they are, and why people know them to be who they are, because they just don't give a
Yeah.
they don't give a
I
damn
don't care.
about what people think about them, or what they're perceived to be. Um, they're their own biggest fan, they're their own biggest hero, and
Mm.
they know the qualities that they have are valuable, and want to be seen and want to be heard.
Mm.
So,
And when it comes to not caring, I thought, especially when I started this podcast, I was still in school, I was in fifth year. Like, as soon as I put that up in my story for the first time, I was scared. I was so scared. The amount of thoughts that were running through my head. I was excited as well. And for a while, maybe a couple of weeks or maybe even a month or longer, I did definitely struggle with what people thought of me. And I knew, I shouldn't care about what people think. You're not supposed to, and I knew that, and people would say it, and grand. But what do you feel is the catalyst in not caring?
Oh, this is a great question, bro. And I was thinking about this right before we hopped on. It is pain and suffering. That's the catalyst. It is when you go through enough physical, spiritual, mental pain in your life and go through enough discomfort, you don't care about what anyone else thinks, believes, or thinks of you because you know how much you've actually gone through to get to the other side. And you ultimately, when you go through enough things in your life, whether they're good or bad, but primarily the bad things, when you go through enough of that and you come out the other side, you're so unapologetically proud and loving of yourself that you got through that, that literally any insignificant comment or whatever someone has to say about you and your life is just, it doesn't matter because they didn't see or they don't know what it took, from you or for you to get to be in the position you were in. So I would say that, bro, 100%.
Wow, that's a powerful answer right there. That's amazing because I really did struggle with it, and I'd be avoiding certain people, what certain people would think, certain people would say, and then after a while I was like, all right, I've thrown so much at the wall, I've taken so much criticism, slag and whatnot. And you're like, I don't really care anymore, and it wasn't. A lot of it came from I know people don't care. Like I came to the realization because I went through all that. I was like, okay, I know people don't really care anymore, and now I just like people don't care about you. Like not in
Yeah.
a mean way or a
No, it's in
different way.
a completely um normal facet of human existence. I mean, like
Yeah,
it's just people are so concerned with what's going on in their own lives that they don't really care what anyone else is doing. And even if they do make a sly remark, it says more about them than it does about you in every single scenario.
yeah,
And like honestly, with I've grown up with a lot of slagging, with a lot of bullying and, sly comments. And I think it was obviously to do with I was very different to a lot of kids in Oldcastle, County Meath, Cavan. When I first moved back home, I was like 10 or 11. I was this very multicultural kid, Americanized,
yeah.
saw things that no kid in Ireland will ever see. Not because they can't, but it's just because they've been inundated subconsciously with like the beliefs that what they see is like real, and they've never seen an Aston Martin. They've never seen or sat in one. It's just one of those things that like they just don't understand, and that's okay. But like I was different, very different, and
Mm.
that obviously took a toll in my upbringing and my childhood,
Mm.
in terms of like my own belief within myself and like how that actually impacted my own ability in life in general. Um,
I'm grateful that you brought that up again because going from Dubai to Ireland, it's two very, very, very different cultures,
mm,
especially in terms of beliefs
mm.
and perspectives. What do you notice in kind of the difference about you and your limiting beliefs compared to other people or societal beliefs in Ireland?
Yeah, it's massive. Like it's just natural though, and like you go back to it. It's just what people have seen, what people know and understand to be real, and it's no fault of their own, but it's just because they haven't put themselves in or have been in that environment where like a 10 million pound high rise apartment building being built beside your house is just like an everyday occurrence, or there's something new being constructed on the Sheikh Zayed Road every time you're going to school in the morning. Dubai was this economical, fruitless, like it was just becoming like what it is today. Back
Mm.
in the 08, 09, 2010 era, the Burj Khalifa was just about being finished. There was multiple different other plans being constructed as well, and yeah, they don't have limiting beliefs in that country. I mean, the Arab
Mm.
world and like the whole like oil culture there is, you know, I remember my dad used to tell me this: build it and they will come, is what a lot of the Arab sheikhs would say. And what he means by that is like, we'll build Dubai to be this metropolis for everyone and anyone to come and do business here, to come and work here, to raise families. And sure enough, once they started making it that place, everyone and their nan wants to go to Dubai, because it's such a it's such an environment to be successful. It's like America, like it's the land of the free. Dubai is the land of, it's the same land of opportunity. Now recently, definitely, it's become a lot more. What's the word? Frugal in who they decide to like allow into the country now, and who they're actually allowing to like set up businesses there, and
Mm.
get visas. Than it was maybe back in the 90s when it was still a desert. But yeah, it's a land of like money, opportunity, expansion. So the people that are there, they're going to be like directly correlate to that belief system. I'm going to charge my laptop here because it's about to die. Yeah, go on.
And how important for you, Ciarán, was your dad in giving you the mindset that you have and the success that you now have in sales and in business?
A lot, and I'll touch on that. It's a lot, man. You know, I think my dad's always had the mindset of like, yeah, like you can do anything. Your dreams are there for a reason, and you should act upon them. So I think he was just a great example for me growing up of like, mental toughness is something you just have to have, if you want to be in this game and do well in it. But also striving to be perfect in everything that I do was just instilled into me from a young age. And I'm so grateful for that, because I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't, know what I know, or I wouldn't be as, intelligent as I am now today if it wasn't for, him constantly like pushing me to be that standard and to set that, very high standard. And although it was, tough sometimes as a kid, like,
Yeah.
bro, we all go through it, like we all have, maybe childhoods or, backgrounds where like we didn't agree with everything our parents did. But looking back now in hindsight, it's made me who I am. And I'm so happy because of that.
Mm. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, and like, you can have two perspectives in life, I think. You can go and walk around life as a victim of it, in terms of like what the circumstances that you were thrown, the cards that you were dealt, or you can walk around with nothing but love, gratitude, and peace in your heart for everything that you have gone through, and knowing that it's shaped you to only benefit you. That's such a subtle but stark difference between, people that are just generally like a lot more, just have a lot more general well-being, and people that don't, in my opinion. So this is the thing about like um, mindset and perspective in general is you either just be happy with who you are or you just don't, and you always find ways to give yourself an excuse as to why you shouldn't be content and happy with your life. Of course, if your standard is like up here and you want to get there, that's perfectly okay. But knowing that even when you do get here, it's not going to like automatically solve all of your problems, and it's not going to like suddenly make everything better, but if you can be here, be happy here, and as you're going up also have a lot of laugh, have a lot of fun doing it, bro, when you get there it's like, oh yeah, cool. And then you're just going to then the bar is going to get a lot higher. You're going to have the next goal, and then you can just, but it's the pursuit of it, the ups, the downs, the middles. It has to be, that's where your happiness is, because it just, you've heard it time and time again. There's no certain materialistic goal. There's no sort of number. There's no sort of achievement that you can grasp and hold on to that's going to give you what you want, and like give you that, like enlightenment, whatever it is. It's just about being present now and knowing that time is actually just this illusion that we place on ourselves of, there is no past, present, future. There's just, it's all there. The future's there, right? For Ciarán, the future's there for Hugh. The past is there for Ciarán. The past is there for Hugh, and the present's here for Ciarán. It's all like, there's no like segmenting time that we're in. It's all one. It's all just like, that's why the whole concept of having like, it's already done. Like, of course it's already done, because like there is that version of Hugh that has a very successful podcast, talking to a lot of hyper successful people, and learning something new every single day and just being happy doing it. And there's also that version of Hugh that's not doing that, but it's just about like stepping into that version now, and then like, of course it's going to be inevitable when you get to that point, whenever it is. You don't have to place like the how, the when, like I need that to happen tomorrow. When you start doing that, that's when it actually gets further and further away from you. Like, you just know that it's already there, right? You just have that knowing, have that conviction, and then enjoy yourself now. Because if you think about it, Hugh or Ciarán at the version of themselves, or the state of themselves where like they have achieved XYZ goal, they are XYZ person, how do you think they'd feel? How do you think they'd act? How do you think they'd be? And if the answer to that question is, well, they'd be relaxed, they'd be calm, they'd be having a serene confidence about themselves, they just let life be. Like, you can be that now, and there's no coincidence that like you become that anyway.
And I think there's beauty. I know there's beauty in the quote unquote suffering, or in the journey. And it's easy to forget that sometimes. It's easy to be so concentrated on whether it be the materialistic outcome that you want, or where you want people to see the version of you they want you to see. But there's beauty in the pain. And I think it's so beautiful, it's so important, and it's easy to not be grateful for it. It's not be grateful for the trials and the tribulations that you're going through.
For sure.
I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, and because ultimately that's where you learn. That's where you grow. That's where you find out a part of yourself that you didn't think you had because you were too afraid to maybe step into it yourself, or step into it like deliberately. You obviously just took a step and you tried something, it didn't work, and then a lot of other areas in your life got affected, and then you ultimately had to survive. You had to become a certain type of individual to go through that and move on from that. And ultimately, the only way we as humans can do that is when you go through, suffering, when you go through discomfort. And, the only people that actually maybe talk down on, people like are the people that just like choose to not experience that in any way, shape, or form and avoid that discomfort because they're so afraid to step into it themselves because they don't think like that fear of having to go through that is enough to keep them where they are. And then they look at someone else and they're like, oh my God, he's actually like going through the trenches. He's going through a lot of the mental warfare. And it's like a threat, or it's like, oh my God, like, he or she is doing that. So, why am I? If that makes
And
sense.
yeah, and perspective is so important. When you were mentioning it there, kind of a quote came to me and then I forgot it, but it just came back to me there. And I saw this like 5 years ago on Instagram. It was these two slides. It was like a small little video actually, and it was an interviewer going up to a homeless man in the street, and he says, "Why are you homeless?" And the homeless man simply says, "Homeless because my dad was an alcoholic." And then the interviewer goes up to a successful businessman. He says, "Why are you a successful businessman?" He says, "I'm a successful businessman because my dad was an alcoholic." I think something can happen to you, and perspective is so powerful that it can either push you down, and it can push you down really far, but it can also elevate you so high, and it can elevate you higher than you can ever imagine. But it's up to you what you do with the perspective that will ultimately dictate your future and the rest of your life.
Because if you think about it, there's 8 billion different people in the world, and there's also 8 billion different worlds, right? It's not like we all experience the same world. You could ask two people what their experience was like on. I love giving this analogy. Like, you can ask two people what their experience was like on a roller coaster ride. One would say it was the most invigorating experience, exciting experience of their life, and the other person would say it was the most awful, ugly, horrendous, life-threatening experience ever to exist in their lifetime. So that kind of encapsulates that whole
Yeah,
that, even what you said there, and that example of the businessman like going up and interviewing the homeless guy and the business person. It's like there's we all live in different worlds, right? Yeah, we might experience the same materialistic world, but how we view it is completely up to you. And that is so powerful. Like, that should really make you wonder, wow, so if I can just look at things differently, if I can just see things in a different light, I wonder what can actually happen, or I wonder what I'll be able to actually like visually see then because of that alteration in my perspective. Like, it's such a it's only really, like, obviously I've become aware of it a lot more recently, but nothing is ever bad. It's only if you perceive it to be.
yeah,
Nothing is ever happening to you. It's
yeah,
always happening for you. But unless you see it as happening to you, then of course it's going to be happening to you. But if you
mm,
like, even for myself, I'll give you an example. This morning, I kind of woke up a little bit late, later than I usually would be. Obviously knew I had this as well today, and I have a lot of onboarding to do with a new offer. And I wanted to go to the gym and whatnot. And I remember I was going to the gym, I had a great workout, and then went to the cafe and wanted to get like just a quick bit of breakfast before hopping on this. The kitchen was closed. Walked down to Estepona, which is like a 30-minute walk. Thought like Mercadona would be open, and it wasn't because it's Labor Day apparently here in Spain. So long story short, haven't eaten, haven't got any food in today. And then I was kind of coming up back on the way up, and I asked, like, "Oh, can we push this back 10 minutes? No worries." And I was thinking to myself, like, "Oh, like everything's going wrong for me today. Like, oh, like this is terrible." And I thought to myself, like, what if this is happening for me, so that
mm,
I can have the best conversation with you that I know I can, and I know we can. And then when you just have that, boom, subtle shift in perspective, then of course, like everything's gonna materialize to have that outcome, you know? And it's like, I could have, you could have just came on and, oh, like I haven't eaten, like everything's happening against me. Oh, this is, you know, not great. Or you could be like, maybe God gave me today to have it exactly how it is. And I don't need to change or fight it or resist it in any way. I can, but I'm going to choose not to.
Mm.
Because how does that actually serve the situation in any way? It doesn't.
Mm. I'm just smiling because what you said is it's just so true. And I, for a couple months back, I said this before. A cousin of mine was very sick and he ended up passing away. But
Mm.
it was a mentally kind of tough time. But I'm grateful for it now. But that's one thing that I realized is that something's only bad if you say it's bad. Like if you give it the power to be bad, and it's bad. I think you're spitting facts. I love what you're saying and the awareness that you have. And I think you've actually put a smile on my face for the rest of the day with this conversation. I have one last question for you. If you were to pass away today, God forbid, and you could only leave one last message for everyone, what would that message be?
If you want something in life, take it. That's it.
I love that. I love that. Ciarán, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much and have an amazing rest of your day.
Appreciate it, Hugh. This has been great. Really appreciate it, man. Keep